Abby, I've just gotten confirmation from a U.S. official that Israel has indeed struck Iran tonight. That what we are seeing, this explosion or explosions around the city of Isfahan, is indeed an Israeli attack against Iran. This is the retaliation that we have thought may be coming for several days now, ever since Iran carried out that strike last weekend against Israel with those more than 300 drones, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles. There are not too many details about the dimensions, the breadth of the Israeli strike tonight, but a U.S. official confirming to me just moments ago that what we are seeing is indeed Israel carrying out a strike against Iran. What we've been seeing from local reports, now multiple Iranian reports, official and semi-official, is explosions near the city of Isfahan, which is in western central Iran. One more thing that the U.S. official told me is that it is not believed to be against a nuclear facility. We've been talking about the city of Isfahan. It is one of Iran's most important. There is a significant nuclear facility there. My understanding from speaking with now multiple U.S. officials is that the targets that Israel had indicated that they would be going after in a counterstrike would not be nuclear. One senior U.S. official also telling me that the targets would not be civilian. As we were just saying moments ago, Abby, the U.S. was expecting Israel to carry out a strike that was limited in scope, perhaps against military targets, but something that would be visible so as to tell the world this is Israel hitting back against Iran. Of course, we've seen these images now for over the past hour. This is a very visible strike. And now we have this confirmation that this was indeed Israel that is attacking Iran. So major questions now, where we go from here. We have to get a much better sense. Indeed, Israel and the U.S. have to have a much better sense of what was struck, what the damage was done, in order to be able to try to predict how Iran might respond. But we have gotten some very serious words from a whole range of Iranian officials over the course of the past few days, the latest of whom was this Iranian foreign minister in New York with our colleague Erin Burnett tonight, warning that if Israel were to attack Iran, that they would strike back hard, that they would expand their range of targets beyond just military, like last weekend, to include civilian, financial, and others, and that they could do so immediately. One thing to note from the foreign minister's interview, he said that they would not be going after U.S. targets unless the U.S. were somehow directly involved. I was told very firmly by a U.S. official not too long ago that the U.S. certainly did not give the green light to this Israeli operation. What we have heard all week long from senior administration officials is that they did not want Israel to carry out this counterattack. They wanted to take the win, so to speak, and essentially let last weekend's defense, that formidable defense of Israel, taking down 99% of what was fired at it, to essentially speak for itself so as not to expand this conflict. Abby?
And that certainly did not happen. Alex, thank you for bringing us that great reporting. Continue to stand by for us, and we'll get back to you as soon as you have more. I want to go to Director James Clapper just to react there to what you heard Alex report. This has been confirmed by a U.S. official to be an Israeli strike against Iran, but not an attack against nuclear facilities that we know are in that area, perhaps military facilities that are also in that area. What do you make of it?
Well, one issue that comes to mind here, Abby, for me, is all of our analyses, or perhaps more accurately, our speculation, seems to be premised on the assumption that both protagonists here, that is Israel and Iran, are attacking each other in the hopes of messaging each other, and that somehow these attacks are circumscribed and limited to convey a message. I think we're rapidly, based on the information that Alex just discussed, that it looks like there was an attack. I think we're rapidly growing out of that phase, and that the escalation ladder is going to get harder and harder to control, and that the messaging phase is perhaps over. I take the Iranian officials, notably the foreign minister, at their word. And I don't think they're going to respond in kind, but they're going to respond with a larger attack that, in their minds, would be more effective than the first one.
That's an ominous warning there. And I think that you may be right. We've been discussing, it's not clear that either side knows how this might end. Director Clapper, continue to stand by for us. Major Mike Lyons is with us as well. Major Lyons, your reaction to the fact, according to Alex's sources, that there were non-nuclear targets that may have been on the receiving end of Israeli bombs here in the region.
Well, they had to be followed up with intel, and they had to be important targets. So what, again, General Mark said, for why they attacked them, what was their reason behind them? Again, it's just too close to that facility in order to think that they wouldn't have to send a signal that they could go and get it. But air defense platforms, there's other air defense platforms they could have attacked along that border. They could have been Republican Guard forces. They could have been other military units that the Israelis thought was high-value targets. And this was an opportunity to go after them. But again, in most cases, they would have to take out multiple air defense platforms along the way, along that axis of attack, if they're especially going to put their own pilots in harm's way in order to conduct this kind of attack. So we have to see. We'll get more information. But from my perspective, the why, I think, comes back to a warning to Iran that they will go after their nuclear facilities.
All right. Major Lyons, stand by again. Joining me now is Robin Wright. She's a fellow at the U.S. Institute for Peace. Robin, you know this region, the conflicts here, the risk, as you heard Director Clapper say, of the escalation ladder being climbed up so rapidly that both parties cannot come down from it. What do you think are the consequences of that?
Well, Israel is clearly trying to demonstrate its military superiority, and it has done that effectively, whether it's in Damascus or now in Iran, especially if it's close to a nuclear facility. It may not take it out, but it is showing what its muscle is. The big question, of course, is what Iran does. And we have to remember that it used only a small fraction of its arsenal. It has over 3,000 ballistic missiles, and so it used somewhere around 10%. It has a lot of weaponry that it can unleash on Israel. Now, the tragedy in all of this is I don't think either Israel or Iran wants the bigger war. Clearly, the United States has used its leverage to try to prevent the region from deteriorating into something that is, no one can contain. One of the big questions, of course, is also what is Israel's long-term strategy? Is it seeking to prevent a nuclear weapon capability, or is it trying to encourage or do things that lead eventually to some kind of regime change? And I think Israel has proven its short-term effectiveness in taking out Iranian or Iranian proxy assets, its weapons depots, its military personnel, but it's not clear what its long-term strategy is. Iran, on the other hand, has a long game. It has proven that it is the inferior military power, but it has built up over the last 42 years an incredible alliance in the region, a deadly military capability. And so the danger is that this does enter a slippery slope and we are into an open-ended phase, even though neither side wants it.
Robin, right, thank you very much for that. Max Boot is still with us. Max, the questions that Robin raised, what are Israel's long-term goals here? And I don't need to remind anyone, there is a very significant conflict going on right now in Gaza that is taking up quite a lot of Israeli resources, but they're also trying to engage Iran really for the first time directly. So where does this go from here?
That's a great question, and that's not something I'm sure that Israeli leaders have necessarily thought through. I think the knock on Israel in recent years is they're very good tactically from a military standpoint. They can hit targets, they can kill people, they know how to, they're a very effective military, but they have a hard time translating tactical military gains into long-term strategic gains. And you're seeing that problem right now in the Gaza Strip, where they're doing a lot of damage, killing a lot of Hamas operatives, killing a lot of civilians. But how are they going to create a long-term peace in Gaza? They don't seem to have any concept of what happens after the guns fall silent. They don't have any idea of who's actually going to govern in Gaza. And I kind of feel like they have a similar problem with Iran. They feel like, okay, we've been attacked. We have to show, don't mess with us. We're going to hit back. But where does it go from here? If Iran hits back, how do they prevent this larger war from breaking out, which is Robin said, and I think that's right. Neither side really wants that larger war, but both sides are determined to show you can't push me around. I have to establish my deterrence. Neither side, I don't think, has a long-term strategy here, and that's very dangerous because emotions are involved, nationalism is involved, and a lot of weaponry is involved.
And look, let's be honest, it's particularly dangerous for the state of Israel, which is like an island in the Middle East, and there's nowhere to turn if there is a broader conflict. So at what point does this need to turn to a conversation about what is it going to take to move toward peace in Gaza and to de-escalate the tensions, not just with Iran, but with its proxies?
Well, I think that's something Israel needs to think about very hard because right now, they're involved in a two-front war right now, at least two fronts, maybe three, depending on how you count, because they have the war in Gaza, they have a war against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and now they're starting a direct war with Iran. That's a lot. I mean, Israel is a very powerful military, but that's a lot of wars at once for one little country to handle.
And it also suggests that perhaps the United States almost might inevitably be dragged into whatever happens there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you saw last week, I mean, U.S. forces were defending Israel. And since October 7th, there have been many Iranian-sponsored attacks on U.S. bases in the region, some of which have killed or wounded U.S. troops. So, yeah, absolutely, the United States is in the middle of it because we're Israel's ally. We're also the ally of some of the Arab states involved. So we're trying to keep peace in the region, but it's becoming very hard to do. It's kind of like a referee trying to step between two guys who are flailing at each other, and you're going to get punched from both sides.
When it comes to the conflict in Ukraine, President Biden has been very clear. There are going to be limits to how involved the United States is. Do you think that there will be any limits when it comes to Israel?
That remains to be seen. I mean, I think Saturday was very unusual, not only in the direct Iranian attack, but also in the direct U.S. response. And of course, a lot of Ukrainians were saying, well, why isn't the U.S. defending us the way they're defending Israel? But I think there is a logic here that the U.S. is desperately trying to prevent a wider war in the region. And so, now the issue is, did Israel ignore U.S. warnings not to attack Iran? And if so, do we wind up defending Israel anyway from the inevitable Iranian counterattack?